My sister grabbed the mic at my graduation party and humiliated me. 9 months later, she was led out of court in handcuffs, screaming my name. N people always say siblings know exactly how to hurt each other. N used to think that was just a saying. N until I learned that the people closest to you don't need weapons. N they already know where the weak spots are. N my sister, Lauren, was 3 years older than me. N growing up, she was the funny one. N the outgoing one. N the person everyone loved being around. And teachers adored her. And relatives praised her. And whenever she walked into a room, people noticed. N was the opposite. And quiet. And focused. N the kind of person who preferred a small group of close friends. N for most of my childhood, I didn't mind being different. What bothered me was how Lauren used that difference as a reason to make me the family joke. And she always had a story about me. N the embarrassing haircut in 5th grade. N the time I got nervous during a school presentation. N the day I accidentally spilled juice on myself at a friend's house. N things that were funny once. N but somehow, and they became stories she told forever. In every family gathering. In every holiday. And every time she met someone new. Knew she loved being the person who kept everyone laughing. Knew the problem was, me was always the person everyone laughed at. And my parents noticed sometimes. But they usually dismissed it. And they said Lauren was just playful. And that I needed to learn how to take a joke. And so I did. A learned to smile. A learned to pretend things didn't bother me. A learned that defending myself only gave her more material. Then came my graduation party. A was 22 years old. After years of studying, working part-time, and sacrificing weekends, I had finally graduated. It was one of the proudest days of my life. And my parents invited family and friends. And there were decorations. And photos. And a slideshow of my childhood. And everyone was celebrating me. And for once, me wasn't the background character. Me wasn't Lauren's little brother. I was someone who had accomplished something. At least, that's what I thought. After dinner, Lauren grabbed the microphone. Everyone assumed she was giving a speech. She smiled confidently. She talked about how proud she was of me. For a few seconds, I actually believed she meant it. Then the tone changed. She started telling stories. Not stories about my achievements. Stories designed to make everyone laugh at me. She brought up the middle school incident. The one I had begged her years ago never to mention again. She exaggerated it. Added details that weren't true. Then she joked that I probably wouldn't survive adulthood without our mother still packing my lunches. Everyone laughed. At first, I tried to laugh too. Old habits. Then I looked around, and realized the entire room was watching me. Waiting for my reaction, I walked toward her and reached for the microphone. I didn't want to start a fight. I just wanted it to stop. But she pulled it away. She smiled and told everyone I was being dramatic. That it was just a joke. That I was too sensitive. The room got quiet. Not because everyone understood, because everyone finally saw it. The moment wasn't funny anymore. It was obvious. She wasn't joking with me. She was performing at my expense. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I simply walked away. That was the first time in my life I stopped trying to convince my sister to respect me. I spent the rest of the night outside, alone. The person who was supposed to celebrate my biggest achievement had turned it into another opportunity to embarrass me. After that night, I stopped answering Lauren's calls. I didn't announce it. I didn't create a dramatic family conflict. I just stepped back. For the first time, I stopped participating in the role she had created for me. Then, 3 months later, something happened that changed everything. A detective contacted me. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then he mentioned Lauren's name. And suddenly, that graduation party didn't seem like the worst thing she had done. The detective asked if I had spoken to Lauren recently. I told him no. Not since the graduation party. There was a pause. Then he asked whether I knew about any financial issues she was having. I didn't. At least, I thought I didn't. The truth was, Lauren had always been good at hiding problems. That was part of what made her so convincing. She could walk into any room smiling. Everyone saw confidence. Nobody saw the cracks underneath. A few weeks after graduation, while I was starting my first full-time job, I noticed something strange. My mother called me asking about a bank transfer. She thought I had sent her money. I hadn't. At first, we assumed it was a mistake. Then we checked the details. The transfer had come from an account connected to my name, except I had never made it. That was the first sign. A few days later, I received a notification from a credit monitoring service. There had been an attempt to open a new credit account using my personal information. The application had been denied. I was confused. I had always been careful. My passwords were secure. My documents were locked away. I couldn't understand how anyone could have my information. Then I remembered something. Lauren. For years, she had helped my mother organize family paperwork. She knew where important documents were kept. Birth dates, social security information, old tax forms. Things siblings normally wouldn't think twice about sharing. I still didn't want to believe it, because no matter how angry I was about the graduation party, this was different. This wasn't a cruel joke. This wasn't embarrassing me in front of relatives. This was serious. The detective explained that several people had reported similar issues. Someone had been using stolen identities to apply for credit cards and loans. The pattern eventually led back to someone close to the victims. A family member. Lauren. When I heard that, I felt something strange. Not satisfaction. Not happiness. Just disappointment. Because suddenly, all those moments from childhood looked different. The constant jokes. The need to be the center of attention. The way she always needed control of the room. Maybe those weren't random personality traits. Maybe they were signs of something deeper. The investigation continued for months. During that time, Lauren contacted me repeatedly. At first, she acted normal. She asked why I was ignoring her. She complained that I was still upset about one stupid joke. She never mentioned the investigation. Then her messages changed. She became defensive. She accused me of trying to ruin her life. She said I had always been jealous of her, that I finally had a reason to make her look bad. That accusation hurt more than I expected. Because after everything, she still couldn't see what she had done. She still believed I was the problem. Eventually, the evidence became impossible to ignore. Investigators found that Lauren had accessed documents she shouldn't have. They traced applications back to devices connected to her accounts. They discovered conversations with people she had asked for help creating fake information. The same confidence she used when telling jokes at my graduation was the same confidence she used while believing she would never get caught. Then came the court hearing. 9 months after my graduation party, the same relatives who had laughed when she grabbed the microphone were now sitting silently in the courtroom. Nobody was laughing. Nobody called it a joke. Nobody said I was too sensitive. The charges were read. Identity theft, fraud, financial crimes. Lauren sat quietly at first. Then she saw me. Her expression changed immediately. For the first time in my life, she looked afraid. Not embarrassed. Not annoyed. Afraid. Because she finally understood something. I wasn't the little brother who would smile and let things go anymore. I was the person who had finally stopped protecting her from the consequences of her own choices. When the judge ordered her taken into custody pending further proceedings, she turned toward me and started shouting my name. Not because she was sorry. Not because she finally understood my pain. Because she wanted me to save her. Just like she had always expected. But this time, I didn't move. I sat there and watched as officers escorted Lauren away. She kept calling my name. She said I was her brother. She said I couldn't let this happen. Those words would have meant something years earlier, back when I was still the kid who believed family meant protecting each other no matter what. But that day, I finally understood the difference between protecting someone and enabling them. I had spent most of my life covering for Lauren. I laughed at jokes that hurt me. I stayed quiet when she embarrassed me. I ignored the way she constantly made herself bigger by making me smaller, because I thought that was what a good sibling did. I thought love meant patience. I thought loyalty meant forgiveness. But I learned something important. You can love someone and still refuse to let them destroy your life. After the hearing, my parents approached me outside the courthouse. They looked completely different from the people who had stood at my graduation party. My mother was crying. My father looked older. For years, they had believed Lauren was just confident. Funny. A little dramatic. They never wanted to admit that the person who made everyone laugh could also be the person causing the most damage. My mother apologized. Not just for the graduation party. For years of telling me to ignore things. For teaching me that keeping the peace mattered more than my feelings. She admitted that every time she told me I was being too sensitive, she was actually teaching Lauren that there were no consequences. My father said something I never expected. He told me he had always assumed Lauren was the strong one. The one who would handle anything. And me. The quiet one. The one who needed more support. But he realized he had mistaken loudness for strength. Lauren had always needed an audience. I had always been the one quietly building a life. That conversation didn't erase the past. But for the first time, I felt seen. Months later, Lauren accepted a plea deal. She avoided a much longer sentence by admitting what she had done. Part of the agreement required her to repay the victims. including me. The amount wasn't what mattered. The money could be replaced. The trust couldn't. A few months after everything ended, I received a letter from her. I almost threw it away, but eventually, I opened it. The letter was unlike anything I'd ever received from Lauren. No jokes, no excuses, no blaming. She admitted that she spent years chasing attention. She said being the funny sister became the only identity she knew. Every laugh made her feel important. Every person she impressed made her feel like she was winning. But somewhere along the way, she stopped caring who she hurt. She wrote that watching me walk away from the courtroom made her realize something. For years, she thought I was the weak one because I didn't fight back. She finally understood that I wasn't weak. I was just patient. And she had mistaken my patience for permission. I don't know if Lauren will ever completely change. Maybe she will. Maybe she won't. That part isn't mine to control. What I do know is that I stopped carrying responsibility for someone else's choices. The graduation party was supposed to be the day Lauren embarrassed me. Instead, it became the day I finally saw her clearly. The person who grabbed the microphone and called me sensitive was the same person who couldn't handle being held accountable. The person who joked that I wouldn't survive without my mother was the person who couldn't survive without manipulating others. And the funniest part? She spent years trying to convince everyone that I was the one who needed help. But when life finally tested us, I was the one standing. She was the one falling. The lesson I learned is simple. A joke stops being a joke when the only person laughing is the person causing the pain. And family doesn't mean accepting everything someone does. Sometimes loving yourself means finally putting down the microphone and walking away from the person who keeps using it against you. A year after everything happened, I went back to the same place where my graduation party had been held. Not for a family event. Not to prove anything. Just because I happened to pass by. I stood outside for a few minutes and remembered the person I was that night. A young man who had finally achieved something important. A young man who should have been celebrating. Instead, he spent the evening wondering why the person closest to him wanted to make him feel small. Back then, I thought Lauren had taken something away from me. My graduation. My confidence. My trust in my own family. But I was wrong. She only revealed something that had been hidden for years. I had spent my entire life trying to earn respect from someone who had already decided not to give it. The moment I stopped chasing her approval, I became free. My relationship with my parents slowly improved. Not overnight. There were too many years of hurt for that. But they made an effort. They listened more. They apologized when they were wrong. They stopped asking me to be the person who always tolerated everything just because I was the calmer one. As for Lauren, I don't hate her. That might surprise some people. After everything she did, many would expect anger. But anger keeps you connected to someone. I don't want that anymore. I hope she changes. I hope she becomes someone who doesn't need to hurt others to feel important. But whether she does or not, my life no longer depends on it. I built a career. I built friendships. I built a life where I don't have to pretend something is funny when it hurts. And the most important thing I learned? Being quiet doesn't mean being weak. Being patient doesn't mean being powerless. Sometimes the strongest person in the room isn't the one holding the microphone. It's the one who finally decides they don't need it. Lauren once stood in front of everyone and tried to turn me into a joke. 9 months later, she stood in front of a judge because the truth finally caught up with her. Not because I destroyed her, not because I wanted revenge, because eventually, everyone has to face the consequences of the choices they make when they think nobody is watching. That graduation party was supposed to be Lauren's moment. She thought she was proving that I was still the little brother everyone could laugh at. She didn't realize she was giving me the final reason I needed to stop living in her shadow. The person she tried to embarrass became the person who walked away stronger. The person she underestimated became the person who survived. And the person she thought would always forgive her finally learned to forgive himself. Some people spend their whole lives trying to make you feel small. The best response isn't always fighting back. Sometimes, it's building a life so big that their opinion no longer matters. Thanks for reading.